Excellent. So let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Again, Amanda Schaefer. I work in the product area at graduate school here alongside Brian. Um, so I am really excited to have all of you here today, as is Brian. He is our educator. So I'm welcoming Brian Sims, a training leader here with us at graduate school. His expertise in project management and generative AI. Brian has spent 15 years in education, including 10 years specializing in project management and 5 focused on artificial intelligence. Brian leads curriculum development and training initiatives to prepare government and private sector professionals for project management excellence, data-driven decision making, and practical application of AI. So if you've taken or plan to take any of graduate school's new AI courses, or is teaching the class himself, his hands-on approach and enthusiasm make practical and fun, as you I'm sure will notice today. And then Brian brings his expertise to help us explore today on what AI agents can do, where they can help, and also just as importantly, where they should not be used. So please give me a round of applause for Brian, and join me in welcoming Brian Sims.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Amanda. Um, Good to be here. Amanda had to, oh, look, people actually clapping with their little reactions. That's awesome. Hi, everyone. Amanda had asked earlier when people were in the waiting room too, how many folks were returning to the webinar series with us. We've done several on AI already. Send a thumbs up if maybe if you've been to one of these before. We are covering an all new topic today. Oh man, look at those thumbs rolling in. Cool. Oh, that's like a quarter of people or so. Right on. Okay, great. So yeah, we're covering a new topic today. As you can see on your screen, this one is particular to AI agents. It's we'll look at agents through a practical and conceptual lens. We're not going to get super technical. We're not going to be coding in the session, that sort of thing. But if you leave this session able to explain what an AI agent is, how it's different than some of the other AI things around, and why human oversight is essential, even if an AI agent is at play, then I'll be super happy and this session will have done its job. So we'll start our session today by grounding ourselves in what an AI agent is with a definition and some examples. We'll talk about how AI agents work and how agencies are beginning to use them responsibly. We'll end the session with some discussion about governance, oversight, and practical guardrails, and crucially, what all this means for the tools that you already have access to in your environment. But I feel the need to say first, big, deep breath for everybody, myself included, because boy, is it easy to look at the headlines or social media feeds and things right now and feel super behind, right? Um, and good news, right? That's just not the case. You're not behind. You're not expected to build agents. Uh, it's moving at even as somebody who's constantly plugged in to what's happening in the AI space, it is moving so darn fast, right? There are very few people who are fully caught up with everything that's actually changing. So again, big deep breath. You're okay. You just even being here, right? Paying attention and attempting to understand what we're going to talk about with AI agents, that's success. Okay. So you're not going to leave today all hyped up about, oh man, I'm not doing enough or whatever. I want things to be clear, about what AI agents are. I'm not going to give you even more hype and add fuel to that fire. So got a lot of really cool stuff to talk about here with AI agents. It is moving really, really fast. So I will explain this in a way that I think is very accessible and maybe even give you some good ideas on what to take back to your work with you. So again, I'll just ground us. There are, I think, 4 things that you have to understand about AI in general for us to be able to talk intelligently about AI agents. Um, We have graduate school has entire courses that go much deeper into this. AI fundamentals, one that I wrote and teach, is a really fun one. It's 4 hours, half a day, and anyway, if you've been in there, and I do see some familiar names, you'll know we have a lot of fun in there. Um, uh, but but anyway, there's entire courses on AI and AI fundamentals. But for the purposes of our conversation today, again, just four things. First, AI systems recognize patterns in data. They they don't know things. They look for patterns, right? And that's important. That's going to come up a lot. Second, their outputs are probabilistic. So they're generating likely responses based on that data that they have been given access to, right? So there's a lot in that statement, but it's not a guaranteed truth. It doesn't mean they went through all the right training and all the right motions. Uh, their output is probabilistic. Third, uh, that that means also that AI is not deterministic. So you can ask the same question multiple times and possibly get different answers, right? Because it's looking at data all the time and learning new things. If you maybe you've even done that before. I've actually had some funny experiences where like I've worked with AI and like it helped me create a deck or something. And later I'll upload that deck or that document back into AI and say, hey, got some questions here. What do you think about this? And that AI is like, what's this pile of crap? Like, fun, something you made, like, so so it's definitely not, a one and done. Once it's given you its output, it's given you its answer. Like that's not necessarily the end of the story. It's not deterministic, which is a good segue into the fourth point that AI doesn't make decisions, right? This is true in a legal sense. It's also true in an ethical sense, right? Humans make decisions. And if you're, using in any use of AI, you are the final word, not the AI. And we want to proceed with that in mind, right? So, uh, an intentionally simplistic explanation of AI and how it relates to agents, how this was effective for me to initially be thinking of it. Maybe it'll help you as well. AI is like a brain, right? Artificial intelligence. It needs a lot of oversight because it's only emulating human intelligence, right? It's not actually real intelligence, but it's artificial. So if AI is a brain, and we can maybe think of generative AI as the mouth or the voice, right? So I can now converse with that brain in plain language. So arguably, like when you're at work and you're conversing with say ChatGPT or Copilot, something like that, it this is actually kind of creepy to say it like this, but right, it's kind of like having a head by your desk, right on your desk, and hey, what do you think? What do you think of this head? Like the head can't do anything, it can't go anywhere, but you can converse with it, ask it questions, it can give you some insights as to what it's looking at and things. So that is a slightly morbid analogy, but I think an apt one. So, with that in mind, then what's an agent? Well, we'll start with a definition. AI agents are a new class of AI systems that are capable of learning actions and adapting over multiple steps to achieve a goal. So, that's a lot. Let's break that down. First, they're goal driven. So, you would specify to an agent something that you want and not how to do it, but this is what I want. So we could say, for instance, like I want you, agent, to keep this system running effectively or process all of these permits by the end of the day. Not going to tell you how to do it necessarily, but that is your goal. Secondly, agents operate in multi-step workflows. They might perform a sequence, to use that last example, like take that application, verify the data, make a preliminary decision, and then send a notification to some person, depending on what it is that you just observed. At each step, they can adapt based on what they are or aren't seeing. So multi-step, that's something good to keep in mind. Third, AI agents are autonomous. So they don't necessarily wait for a human to confirm every decision. We'll talk a lot more about this today. So, like once you've set a goal and put up proper guardrails, the agent can then kind of move independently towards that goal, maybe even finding new and efficient ways that, humans haven't thought of. That doesn't mean that an agent is unsupervised, but it does mean that it can handle the routine decisions on its own, which, again, if in a well-designed environment, frees up your team to do the fun stuff, the focus on strategy, the higher order work, right? So that's an important component. And lastly, AI agents are context aware. So they don't operate in a vacuum. They sense and can respond to their environment. So that might mean, and again, our application example, that it's reading data from a database and picking up specific details about a user, and then comparing that with the application they just submitted. They can figure that out on their own, right? That, oh, I see Brian submitted this form and he looks like he missed some spots, right? So this situational awareness that agents can have is what allows them to adapt to really complex workflows. And again, we'll talk more about this later. So these four characteristics, being goal-driven, being multi-step, autonomous, and context-aware, are what differentiate an AI agent from just some other AI or some, particularly smart software program. And that's what makes them so powerful. And it's why governance matters so much. And so, again, we'll be talking about all of this in more depth. But at a really high level, this is what an agent is. So, again, if generative AI is like having our brain with a voice that we can converse with and those types of things. An AI agent might be thought of as adding figurative hands and feet to it, right? Because it can go places, it can execute tasks, it can move files from here to there, or walk it across the country, those types of things. So hopefully that's a good analogy that helps you kind of conceptualize what an AI agent is. Uh, an agent will typically have four main components. One is the model that it's using. So you might think of it as its brain, right? So this is the reasoning engine that's at the center of the agent. This is the thing that helps them do their job. It may be like if you're using Copilot, I think last time I checked is using like ChatGPT 4.0 or something like that. Like that's the brain, right? They will also have tools. So, and you can think of this like having, hands and eyes and that can move around and those types of things. These are functions that the agent can execute on in the outside world. So, I do need to go to the web or go find this file or read all of these emails. Like the agent can go to those places or call some system API or something to get access to another part of a network or something. So they'll have some tools that they're granted access to. An AI agent will have context. So this is, again, in keeping with our human analogy, kind of like having a memory, right? This is the information that your agent can get access to at any moment, like we talked about, being able to see what information has previously been entered about Brian in some database or something. And the management of this context is a whole different thing that we're not going to really talk about a whole lot today. We talk about it more in the class, but that's something called context engineering. And lastly, there's its loop. Dare I use the phrase, its life, the life of the agent, right? So this is that continuous cycle, that while loop of observe, think, act over and over and over again until its mission or its goal has been completed. So in combination, all four of these things, pretty powerful stuff. And what's also good to note is that this is applicable across platforms. So whether an agent has been built, completely from scratch with people who really do know how to code and do all that cool stuff, or it's in, Gemini or Copilot Studio or Claude Cowork or something like that, these are the structures that they all have. So in a government context, maybe you're there already with my human analogy, but you might think of an AI agent as like a junior teammate or a functioning, movable junior assistant or something. I think the teammate analogy or assistant is probably a good one because right they can help carry out tasks for you within its given scope, within the scope that you've given them. They have some decision making authority. I just need you to go get me this thing. And if you go up the stairs or take the elevator, right, that's up to you. But what I need is this thing back, right? And they can generally, right, if they're not too new, they can do multiple steps, right? You can give them multiple assignments that they could execute, and all aligned with that goal, and work until those goals are met, if that analogy assists. So, kind of interesting to note too that agents are here already. I was reading, I don't know, I didn't notice if we had anybody from Veterans Affairs here. Throw up a hand or a signal or something if anybody here is from the VA. Oh, there's at least one, a couple maybe. I was reading too. Oh, there go a bunch more. Great. Okay, yeah. So the Veterans Health Administration has this storm system stratification tool for opioid risk management. Um, oh, good. And I put that on the slide too. That's awesome. It's this AI-driven decision support system, as I understand it, that will help, like I guess, as veterans take out prescriptions for opioids and things. It's monitoring that and flagging certain things that need flagging. And if a certain person or a case is a particularly high risk, it can flag that. And this has been really successful for the VA. And they reported in their AI use case inventory a 22% decrease in mortality. Uh, so right, like so the VA is using it and that's an agent, right? It's constantly looking at the data. We'll break down what makes up an agent here in a few slides, but so it's in use at the VA already, which I found really interesting, and they're already seeing really great results from that. That's amazing. Um, but for the rest of us, right, at, it's at least at our fingertips, the ability to use agents. In what was it, September or so, fallish of last year, Microsoft and GSA announced that Microsoft 365 partnership. So usually at no cost, too, most agencies have access to Microsoft 365 Pilot, or Copilot rather. And in that deal that they penned together, it specifically called out that, and this could be really great for agency use cases, like citizen inquiries, case management, contact centers, and that sort of stuff. They could use the agents that are inherent in the Microsoft 365 Copilot to help agencies do their work. So it may even, IT allowing, you may even have access to build agents right now. Quick poll again. Maybe again you can use the thumbs up or something like that. Is everybody here did you all have access to Microsoft Copilot, or have you used it or have you used it in the last couple of weeks? Hmm. All right, that's going to be easily half the people. Yeah, got it. Great. Cool. Okay. So what I want to send home here, some one person said no. Okay, got it. Is you don't have to be building an agent necessarily. Again, whether you leave here and this sparks some creativity that you're going to go off and do amazing things with agents or not, right? You don't have to be building an agent to be affected by one. And so that's the purpose, a big purpose of this session, right? I think we all need to be educated about this is here, it's being used or can be used, and there's a lot that goes with that. So when talking about what an agent is, sometimes it's really helpful to understand what something is by talking about what it's not. So let's do a little bit of that. So traditional automation, like RPA or robotic process automation or macros and things like that, I'm sure we've all used. Those are rule-based, right? It follows a scripted sequence of actions. If anything unexpected happens, uh-oh, right? It just stops. It can't do something that it didn't that wasn't pre-programmed in, right? So That's automation. And agents are much different than that, as you can probably tell already, right? They're adaptive. They're given objectives, and they can dynamically figure out how to meet those goals. So a good example of this, spoken with an organization where, typically they would have like their user data is replicated on servers every evening or whatever. I think at like 6 p.m. or something like that. But if they were to employ an AI agent in that process, the AI agent might be able to decide, well, I think we can transfer earlier because of things that it knows, right? Or things that it's been given access to. And it can flag records and, things like that. So a set system that's set on a specific clock, an AI agent is again going to be different because it can make some other decisions and override, some set rule if the allowable conditions are met. Um, Also, think about chatbots, right? A lot of government websites, especially at state and local levels, have these chatbots. They're designed for conversation. They answer questions, guide users through simple procedures. That's fantastic. But they're reactive, right? They respond only when asked. And AI agents are more capable than that. They're more proactive. An AI agent, certainly you can converse with an AI agent, but its real power is that autonomy that we were talking about earlier, that chaining together of multiple actions, that multi-step stuff that chatbots just simply couldn't do. We also, there's decision support tools like analytics dashboards and things like that AI can generate to help humans give information for humans to consider. Um, and in that instance, right, even still, the human decides what to do. But as you're probably noticing through our discussion already at this point, humans, or AI agents rather, can close that loop. They can combine the analysis and some autonomous action to do certain things that they've been programmed that are allowed to do. And you might be wondering here, where do AI assistants fall in, like Claude or ChatGPT or Grok or things like that, and they really kind of straddle this line here between chatbot and decision support columns, right? Because you can go to one of these AI assistants and say, "Hey, what time's the DMV open?" And it'll tell you. And in that instance, it's acting like a chatbot. But you can also ask these, analyze this policy document. What risks do you see? And that's those sorts of things. And when you do those types of tasks, it's acting as decision support. So same tool, but kind of two different roles there. But what's consistent is even the most capable AI assistants hand the decision back to you, right? It doesn't do anything on its own. And that's a really critical distinction here that separates, an AI assistant from an AI agent. So in summary, automation follows some rules. Chatbots responds to things that you prompt it. Decision support tools inform humans. But AI agents combine aspects of all three and add autonomy. And that's what makes them really powerful for using in our workflows, um, and consequential if they're not designed properly, right? So again, it's really good that you're here learning about AI agents, what they can do, and as we'll talk about, what they can't do or shouldn't do. So we're talking about AI agents right now. One, because it is buzz, buzz, buzz. Towards the end of 2025, it felt like every headline I was seeing, and I, granted, subscribed to a lot of AI related items. It was all about agents. That was going to be the kind of the future for 2026. And so far, anyway, that I feel like that's been pretty correct. Um, uh, the Claude's co-work and all the kind of the big AI names have been adding agentic type features into their platforms so far this year. So that's really interesting to observe. But why are we talking about it now and in a government context? Well, sure, one, the buzz, but also, efficiency and scale. I don't have to tell you all, right? The workloads are enormous. There's lots of forms, maybe even a backlog of them, lots of applications, procurement actions that need to happen. And AI agents could be a really useful tool here, handling the tasks, handling those tasks at scale. And as I mentioned earlier, right, and ideally freeing up the precious few humans that are around to do the work to do the more interesting things, the strategic things, the judgment intensive work, right? Um, it can also certainly like these can just improve public service, right? An agent doesn't go home at 5, right? Agencies are using these because they can assist people after hours at midnight, or be triaging emergency requests in seconds, right? Much faster than us, even during normal business hours. So it again can be a real force multiplier for that reason. um, Complex decision support. So the AI agents can look through really large data streams, things that would take us humans, hours, maybe days to do. It can do that in seconds, right? So this is particularly valuable, and like where we talked about already, where in areas like national security, cybersecurity, emergency response to health issues and things like that, like we saw with VA Storm system. So it can really be helpful for those complex decisions. Lastly, though, technology and policy momentum, right? Obviously, this administration is very pro AI, and the technology is only getting better, right? Those current executive orders actively encouraging agencies to adopt AI where appropriate. So lots of reasons to be having this conversation right now, right? So the need is real. The tools are ready, and the policy environment is moving in this direction. So, this is why this felt like, a good time to be talking about this as things are really ramping up in the AI agent space. So how do we start making these things? Um, well, a couple things we want to do. We want to map our process, identify the pain points in that process, and define the outcome for that process. And this is just a mental checklist, right? And the order here matters. So let's kind of walk through this in an example scenario that will hopefully help synthesize this for us. So um, let's say we have a process where we're handling citizens' requests for, say, a business license or some sort of license where applications are submitted. So, what we would first do is write down each step. Okay, a person is going to submit the application, an intake officer reviews that, the data is verified, a recommendation is made, and eventually it's a supervisor touches it and either approves or disapproves, right? So then what we would do is, all right, well, this is the process, and this usually takes, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks, maybe a couple of days or something like that. Where are the big bottlenecks in this process? What does someone spend the most time doing? And maybe it's repetitive data entry, or, well, it takes Brian, the intake officer, a long time to do this because he's got, 12 systems to check, and, we have information's dispersed all over, right? Um, those are good candidate spots for agent assistance. So, okay, we've got that in mind. Now, and what is the desired outcome? Well, let's say in this example, for example, that our goal was to ensure that every application gets a decision back to the person who submitted it in under say 48 hours or so, right? So that outcome then becomes your agent's North Star, and its measure of success. Organizations will often try to automate this entire process at once. Don't do that. Start with a single pain point, where, like 50% of the time here is this data verification. Great. That's going to be our first agent, and its entire existence, its whole job is going to be to do that one thing. So there's a recommendation. So we have to think through that process, if we want to start employing or designing an agent. So what can an agent do? Well, when you design your workflow, think about the part of the job that the agent will do. Again, we can take as our example that it's going to be the data verification from what we just looked at. Um, and What they can do can kind of come in again. That seems to be kind of our magic number for this presentation today. It can do basically four things. One, it can do intake, so it can be your agent's front. The agent can be the front door, right? It can take some raw input, be it the application, like our example, or a complaint, or some other sensor signal or something, um, and that can be the front door. Some agencies are using agents to take in like the emails that come in weekly, let's say, extract needed information from them automatically, and that spares the staff from having to manually, look through all that data. So they can do that initial intake, that read and that capture. They can do analysis. So an agent can do the heavy reading or the heavy data crunching. Um, this could be reviewing documents for certain keywords, checking applicant data against databases for eligibility, summarizing, the big issues, those types of things. So they can do analysis type work for us. They can also make recommendations. Based on that analysis, an agent can suggest a particular outcome, right? So that's something it can do, and that would save a significant amount of time um, uh, by doing that initial decision work, right? Okay, it looked at all of this, and it's Brian. Here's what I found. So up to you, boss. But here's what I recommend, and I can go look and see if I agree with that or not. Lastly, escalation, and this is really crucial because a well-designed agent should know what its limits are. If something unusual is coming up, uh, an agent should hand it off to alert someone else, right? Not try to handle it on its own. And that escalation is a feature. It's not a failure, right? That's good. That means the well-designed system is working. So if we're clear about these roles and if we're building an agent and we know it's one of these roles that we want it to do, um, that's really powerful, right? Because then we know what the agent is and isn't doing, which means now we know what the human team is and isn't doing. And that division is what makes the workflow really efficient. Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I see there's a question that Claire just surfaced. What's the difference between an AI agent and agentic AI? Agentic AI is a system of agents, because that's another thing, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. You also don't necessarily want to overload your agent with too many tasks at once. So like I've seen systems where we might have there's an agent specifically that is looking at grammar and punctuation. That's its whole job. It's the editor agent, right? And there's another that, okay, well, is checking for policy, let's say, and adherence to policy, those types of things. And there's maybe another agent who's the manager agent, who's making sure that all those agents are doing their jobs and staying within their boundaries, right? So a specific agent is an AI system with one particular task. An agentic system or an agentic AI is a system of those agents all working together. Hope that helps. So this is what AI agents can do. What can't they do, or where should we not use agents? Great question, by the way. Um, there are places where, it could assist, but it maybe probably shouldn't. So, so let's talk about each one of those here. A first use case is for irreversible rights impacting decisions, right? Those types of things require human judgment and accountability, right? That's not something we would want to build an agent for. Life or safety critical decisions, like the decision to dispatch emergency services or a particular treatment or use of force or something like that. The stakes are too high there for an autonomous action. Again, fine to make a recommendation based on the data that's been provided, but we would not let an AI agent make that final call, right? Like we talked about earlier. Policy or value judgments. Um, uh, Probably shouldn't leave it up to the AI to decide what's fair, right? Or what a new policy is, right? For those reasons that we talked about at the very beginning of our session, right? It's not deterministic. AI is not deterministic. It is probabilistic. It should not have the final word because there's too many questions about the data that it's been trained on, things like that, right? Humans have to have that final say. Also, one-off, highly unique cases, right? Um, as you can probably conceptualize from what we've talked about around AI so far, every case is a little bit different, right? And if something is way far off the beaten path, um, the agent's not going to know how to act, right? It's never seen this before. Um, so it's not a good candidate, for an agent to be overseeing that work. Agents, remember, thrive on volume and consistency, not exceptions. So the good tasks, as we're thinking through this, to give to an agent or build an agent for would be something that's highly repeatable, right? Again, let's get us out of that drudgery and put the humans onto more complex tasks. And lastly, situations where there is poor or biased data. So we've all probably seen the headlines in the last couple of years where AI has been caught doing this, or it's been exposed that this happens. That if historical data reflects an inequality or an error, an agent will amplify them. Like, oh, we just did not train our data on that demographic, let's say, and now that demographic has been introduced, observe as the agent flounders, right? Right. We've seen that happen even in the last couple of years. So again, here, human governance and data remediation. Oh my goodness, are a requirement really. So none of this means that we shouldn't use AI in these areas, but it does mean that AI agents need strong human oversight, right? That's a theme of this webinar, and will certainly be a theme of all the AI webinars. But presumably you're able to appreciate that at this point. So we'll bring this together. I'll go through this fairly quickly based on how we're doing with time, but maybe this gives you some ideas that you could take back to your agency as well. There's a couple of really good use cases based on what we just talked about, or where AI agents would be good and maybe not so good. So this is kind of a quick reference for where they tend to work well. So case triage, certainly, high volume, repeatable queues. This is the kind of work that an agent would be really good at, right? Let me sort these into different buckets and flag different exceptions, those types of things. Also, document analysis. Agents are well suited for situations that have a bit of structured data, a bit of unstructured data, like forms, reports, and applications, because agents can easily extract, compare, and summarize things, like you maybe have even seen in your own work with AI so far. Internal coordination, like routing requests, scheduling, tracking approvals. These work particularly well because they're recurring tasks and the rules are consistent, right? So we can, with a fair amount of faith, pass off things like that to an AI agent because the boundaries are very clear. And monitoring and alerts. This is maybe arguably the strongest fit for an agent, right? Because if there's something like what we talked about with the VA storm system, a continuous data stream that's running, and something needs to be watching this all the time for thresholds being reached or anomalies in the data or a certain trigger or something, and it really should be happening around the clock. This should never not be monitored. Again, that's a great use case for an AI agent because they don't have to sleep, right? And this is what they're really really good at, sifting through all sorts of data. So notice what all these use cases have in common too, right? It's again volume, repetition, really clear rules. If you're considering using an AI agent in a situation where these conditions don't exist, we're likely back to the where not to use agents territory. I see a couple questions coming in through my periphery here. Let me just look through some of them and see if I didn't get to any of these questions in my talk track there. Yes, timeliness and quality would improve. Yes, exactly. Yeah, Dominic mentions, yeah, that timeliness and quality would improve. Yeah, exactly. And if it's constantly being monitored, well, that's why it has to be constantly being monitored, either as proof that it is working or proof that it isn't, and we need to shut it down. But yes, it does as it continues to run and get more familiar with how exceptions are handled. Not every AI agent is able to do this, but many are. They're able to learn and improve. So yeah, really good point. No, we will not have copies of these slides, but you will all get access to the recording. Um, yes, and totally right, Neil. Yes, and that name looks really familiar. Have you been in class? AI agents are really good for situations that are rule based. Yes, exactly. Sure is. Yeah, great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about more, again, conceptually building it, because, right, we're all going to have access to different technology and things. Like, I believe it's true anyway that VA's storm system was built, kind of from scratch, that sort of thing. But let's look at what's true with AI agents, no matter what tool you're using, okay? Um, One, they have a goal. This is the outcome that that agent is trying to achieve. So again, this is something like any good goal for us humans too, right? Should be specific and measurable. Not, hey, improve the efficiency of this process, but process all of these requests in 48 hours or something like we saw earlier, right? So it has to have a goal regardless of system. There has to be some sort of trigger that gets the agent to start doing its thing. Is that when an application was submitted, like we saw in our example earlier? Is it a flag in the system or a specific time of day or something? Um, if there isn't a trigger, it's not going to work. Okay, you don't have a workflow or that an agent could help with. There, of course, has to be some sort of inputs. So, what information does the agent need to do the job? Where's the information that it has? Where is it coming from? Is it reliable? There needs to be some sort of input happening with your agent. It has to have some sort of action to do. So, what steps do you need me to take now that I have all this information? Um, this is where the scope is defined, right? So an agent might get a bunch of information that they can then create a draft response to, route it up to Brian, and flag this as urgent, and send a notice to me in Teams or whatever that, hey, there's a something waiting your review, right? Um, so it has to have some sort of actions that it is allowed to take. They also have boundaries. So it needs to know, right, what's off limits. Is it, say, certain systems? That's what's off limits. Certain dollar thresholds, maybe, right? Or you're allowed to look at this system and look at this particular subset of data, but you can't look any further. I haven't granted you access any further. Um, so these are uh, I don't know. Like it's kind of placing limits on it, right? And it's these limits, it's those boundaries. That's what makes these agents safe to deploy because you tell it where it can and can't go, right? It doesn't have key card access to the top floor, and that's good, right? So you get to set that. You're in control, or the people who build the agent are. And lastly, there has to be some sort of oversight. When is a human involved? What is it that they review? What is it that they approve? Under what conditions do they intervene? Um, if you're mapping all this out and this section is blank, um, it's not ready. You go back to the drawing board. You need to create an agent for a different system. So no matter what system is used to build an agent, it can be described as having all of these. So this is maybe a useful exercise for you to jot down either mentally or actually on paper. If you can't fill out, oh, I know exactly what it would be, each one of these 6 steps, your agent isn't ready to be built. It's not ready to exist. I've got a little diagram here that shows what building an agent kind of looks like. And it may be simpler than you thought, right? But the simplicity is intentional here, like I've mentioned a couple of times. Most real world agents should start this simple. You can always add complexity later, right? But starting simple, oh my gosh, this is working. It's burning through, looking at these applications and flagging them either to Brian or Amanda or Claire based on, certain conditions are met. And Brian's getting the stuff he's supposed to get. So is Amanda, so is Claire. This is working beautifully, right? You can always add extra layers of complexity later. So how I kind of think about it and how I talk to some others about it is like if you can do this, if you can draw a flow chart of the decision logic, um, then you may have an agent on your hands, right? But if you can't do this, if it isn't clear, again, your agent is probably not ready to be built because there's other decisions that have to be made. So a couple quick things on boundaries for the agent. Again, this is the things that we would definitely have. This is where we define where our agent can and can't go, what it can and can't do. There are several things to consider here. We need to talk about its scope. So what is it allowed to work on? The data that it can access. What is it allowed to see? Right, you can imagine this, right? Like if we're building an agent that is looking at these permit applications, it has no business looking at, financial data or some place completely irrelevant to its task, right? So that's a boundary that needs to be set for sure. The maximum authority. So where's the ceiling? And again, a great example of this is dollar amounts. We could say have an agent, an HR agent that approves timesheets, and if it's under 40 hours per week, and the person submitting it is on this list of people, cool, just go ahead and process it. But if it's anything over 40, then that maybe needs to be escalated to a supervisor. Those sorts of things. Like we mentioned before, right? Boundaries need to be specific, testable, and auditable. Um, and lastly, that boundary to set is when to stop and ask a human. Every agent should have conditions under which it pauses and hands off something to a human, right? This is not a failure state, as I mentioned before. This is a feature, right? Because this is what it's built to do. You do that repetitive thing and then pass it off to me. So again, I'm freed up for these higher value tasks. So if there's one big slide, I think in this session to remember, it might be this one. Uh, the AI agent is only as trustworthy as the human oversight structure around it. And there are 4 points. Again, there's that magic number for our webinar again today, that need to be very clear before an agent goes live. One is final approval. Who is making that final approval? Um, this should be written into the agent's design and not left as an assumption, right? So we need to know who's making that final call. Escalation also. The agent has to have a defined path for situations outside of its scope. Remember, think of that flow chart that we sent. If you go here and it's there, awesome. If you go here and it's not there, send it over to Brian. This is outside of your control, right? There has to be some process for override. So any authorized person should be able to stop, reverse, or redirect the agent's actions, right? That has to be something that is thought through, like we saw in some of the earlier slides. That's a documented procedure, and people know and it's being monitored enough that people know, when to pull that cord, for example. And lastly, it should be auditable. So there has to be a record, right? I know there's a lot of parts of AI that um, you can't fully understand, black box AI and things like that, where we can't fully understand exactly how it did, but there has to be some sort of record. What did it do? When did it do it? What input was it looking at? And any actions that it makes should be clear enough, transparent enough that if, wait, I don't understand that. Let me go back and look. Let me see that person's record. Oh, okay, I get it. I see why it made these decisions. And if that audit trail isn't visible and auditable, then again, your agent's not ready for deployment. So there's a couple key risks to manage. I see we've got about 11-ish minutes left. I'll try to go a little bit faster because actually I have quite a few slides left still. But so everything we've talked about so far assumes that this has been designed responsibly. But I want to talk about what will keep that responsibility intact. And so I'll name them here and we'll kind of talk about what to do about them on the next slide. And I think those two together will make a nice package. So one is unintended or harmful actions, right? Because the agent operates with autonomy, it might do something that designers don't foresee. And actually, it looks like we have a question about that in the chat, so that's perfect because we're going to talk about this here on the next couple of slides. So boundaries and monitoring are set up to be a safeguard. And again, we'll talk more about that one in the next slide. opaque decisions, which I just mentioned, right? We have to often, especially in public service, we have to explain why this decision was made. And some AI models can't do that or don't do that very clearly. So again, we'll address this on the next slide as well. But this it's a risk, right? Um, Biased or low quality data, like we mentioned earlier, because it's always learning from that historical data, right? So this is a risk. What do we do about it? Overtrust by staff, kind of the other end of the spectrum, maybe. Um, uh, you might have heard of this. Sometimes it's called automation bias, when people stop meaningfully reviewing what an agent is outputting and go, "Yeah, it's fine. That's right. I look at this every day. It's always good. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine." If you slip into that complacency, that's a risk, right? Something could slip under the radar unnoticed. So again, we'll talk about what to do about it on the next slide. And crucially, too, security and misuse. Um, an agent, especially an agent with significant autonomy, is could be a real high value target, right? And if someone has influence to its inputs or logic, that damage can really scale quickly. So just like any other critical system, if we start to use AI, there have to be the proper guardrails and governance in place. So these, don't intend to scare anybody by highlighting these. They're not reasons to necessarily avoid agents, but they are a reason to understand, respect, if I can use that word, even, the slides that came before this, right? It's why we need to design a good system and have governance requirements in place. So again, so what do we do about these types of things? Well, for over automation, when that shows up, you might see this in your team's behavior, right? Um, uh, Constantly it's being manually overridden. Staff are just starting to, I don't even use I know the bot makes recommendations now, but I don't even use that anymore. I'm just going back to doing it by hand, right? If you start to see those types of patterns, that means there's probably some sort of scope problem with your agent. So a remedy to that I would recommend is maybe pull back the agent's authority and resize the task. Maybe you gave it too much to do, and maybe you need an agentic system, and maybe it's another agent. Maybe what you gave that initial agent should really, practically speaking, be broken up into two or three, right? Um, so maybe it's been given too much. It's been overly automated. We talked a little bit about drift, and this can happen. A well-calibrated agent can gradually start producing decisions that are no longer reflective of their current reality. And so what you might see, what might be a flag for this is your changes in your outcome metrics, or decisions that staff flag as, well, this isn't matching policy anymore, right? So proof positive here of why we need to be constantly monitoring these systems, because life happens, times change, and unless you are actively engaged with the maintenance of these agents, that world will move on without them, right? So they need some help. For the opacity and bias, we were talking about this with the data, right? You the AI agent will reflect the historical inequities that it's been trained on, right? So what we do about this, we can watch for patterns in who the agent's decisions are affecting. And again, maybe this didn't matter or wasn't as noticeable when we were doing, 5 of these a month, but now that we're doing 500, this is a much bigger deal. And I can see that in the data that these are the often impacted uh, uh, these are the people who are often impacted by these decisions. So that's definitely something to watch out for. Oops, sorry. Go back. Oh, gave away that big reveal at the end there. Also, too, for over reliance, right? And this is kind of the other end of the spectrum. This is people just believing so much in it that, like, yeah, and it's good, it's fine, and no longer paying attention. Um, uh, so what we do, so what can you do about that, right? Like, yeah, it's so fast, this is so good, I don't even need to watch it anymore, right? We don't want people to, we don't want to create that culture of complacency, right? So we can address that through training, clear accountability, and maybe making it a meaningful part of the review, instead of just being, a box that they can check or whatever, right? So there's the big reveal is that the guardrail, a guardrail that applies to all four of these. Hopefully you've noticed this as a theme in our agentic talk track here so far. But again, start small, keep humans clearly accountable, and build in regular review points. Not because this is some tech out to get us and it can't be trusted, but because it needs governance, right? And the world changes, and we want the systems that we're building, these agents that we have deployed, to mature with it, right? Not without it. So as we are kind of rounding into our last few minutes together here, I want to make sure we land on some practical things. So whether no matter what you do, um, uh, no matter where you sit, your responsibility is going to look a little bit different, right? As a user, it is your responsibility to understand what an agent can and can't do within your context. So as a user, uh, maybe I'm now working alongside an agent who's taken along the repetitive parts of my job. It is now my job to verify the outputs before they're acted on. Don't assume that because the agent was very, very confident and did it very quickly, that it was the right thing, right? So as a user, that's kind of our responsibility. As a supervisor or manager, do you know if your team is using agents? Um, if they are, where does the agent end and the human begin, right? Are people engaged meaningfully in those outputs, or is it just being rubber stamped, right? So something we certainly need to be aware of. And as a decision maker for an agency or any organization, um, I think the big takeaway for you would be require documentation, right? Make sure the boxes that we've talked about have been checked. Are we clear on scope? Are we clear on this agent's boundaries? Do we know who's accountable? What are the escalation procedures? How often is this going to be reviewed? We'll look actually on the next slide at a deployment readiness checklist that'll hopefully be very good for everybody here. So um, the point is, you don't need to build an agent. You don't need to be a super techie person um, to have a responsibility for how it operates. So again, you just being here, understanding what an agent is, where it's appropriate, what does governance look like with that agent. That's a professional competency that you're really intended to walk away for this session from with. So here's that checklist with some practical takeaways from our session today. Before you deploy any AI-assisted workflow, every item on this list should be confirmed, ideally in writing for many people to see it, right? What do we have a clear purpose and scope? Do we know what its goals, its triggers, its inputs, its boundaries are? And that's well documented. Do we know where the human oversight points are? Who's responsible for this? What's the escalation path for A's and B's, right? That all has to be documented. Legal and policy review completed. Different agencies obviously have different requirements, but this is a crucial step. Are we allowed to be doing what we're about to do? The proper data and security controls. Is is our agent been given access to everything? What it's been given access to? Is this accurate? Is this appropriate? Is this properly protected? What happens if it went off the rails? How devastating would that be to our system? That's a conversation that every agency and organization needs to have before deploying agents. Monitoring and escalation procedures, again, should be well defined. Do we know who's doing what and when? And lastly, workforce training, right? Does everybody know what you now know? That this is why this is going to be amazing and make our lives so much better. But this is what we know to look out for, right? So as I tend to think with most things in life, education, being more educated about it, does absolutely no harm. So here's a couple of takeaways for us. Remember that AI agents are really powerful, but again, they're not the decision makers, right? Us humans are. A responsible deployment of an agent takes this really great stuff that's happening with technology and combines it, harmonizes it with our oversight and judgment, right? So I hope you got that out of this session. As I say in all my classes, I know we're at time here, stay curious, try this out. If you've got Copilot, you can go and create an agent right now, even. You don't have to deploy it. You can just see what the steps are, and you'll see a lot of what I talked about today present in when you begin to build it. Um, we have a class if you want to talk and see more demonstrations of how to do this, AI agents for government workflows. It's just a half-day course. And again, we have a lot of fun in there. So hope to see you all there. And if you're interested in general at more AI training, graduateschool.edu/AI, we'll take you to a page that has all our offerings. Maybe, okay, now I know what agents are. Got it. I'm interested in some other aspect of AI. There's a lot to be seen there. So we had a lot of people with us today. Thank you all so much for taking some time out of your afternoon to be here with us. And enjoy the rest of your day and stay curious. Thanks, everybody. Oh, that's really nice comments. Thank you, everyone.
Great job, Brian.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Cool, cool. Wow. Amazing comments. Thanks for all the nice DMs,
I'm going
everybody.
to
I'm
stop
glad
the
this was so
recording now,
approachable.
Brian.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.